Welcome, everyone. I'm Monique and I'm a Student Learning Support Officer at St Dominic's Catholic College in Mayfield. We provided education for children with a range of disabilities, including hearing impairment, autism spectrum disorder, and moderate cognitive disability. Today, I'm joined by Andrew, our head of secondary teacher, to unpack the complexities of supporting students with autism spectrum disorder level 1 in mainstream classrooms. Today, we are going to talk about the characteristics, challenges, strengths, and strategies to help all teachers feel more confident in building an inclusive learning environment. Good afternoon, Andrew. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us about your role and experience working with students with ASD?
Teach at St Dominic's Catholic College in Mayfield. My role is classroom teacher, and I also am the acting secondary coordinator. So my experience at St Dom's started in 2017, towards the end of 2017, so I'm coming up to about 8 years at St Dom's, but in terms of teaching, I graduated from university in 2010, so I started teaching end of 2010, 14 years is that, I think? Yep. Quite near enough. In terms of my experience with teaching students with ASD Level 1, I think I probably started teaching kids with ASD Level 1 when I first started. They were just undiagnosed. So I've recognised that was a fairly common trait in a lot of kids, but now, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, diagnosis has gone exponentially up. So, yeah, if I could say anything in terms of the experience, it's definitely out there, and you realise after you've done it for quite a long time that you were teaching kids that were undiagnosed. So in terms of my leadership role, I took on the acting coordinator role nearly 4 years ago, and that just entails predominantly looking after the curriculum side of things for the secondary element of the school. So it's a K-12 school. We only went to year 12 last year, so we've had to expand our programming and the way that we deliver different subjects, moving into work experience and then outcomes post-school, which has been really good. In terms of that, I did that for pretty much my whole career. I worked in sort of further education, and also moving kids, transitioning them out from 11, 12 and beyond. So that's good. That's something that I've had experience with throughout my teaching. I think since being in an SSP for the last 8 years, looking back at my mainstream teaching, there's been times where I just thought that no one was equipped to teach mainstream because they didn't know any of the skills to teach all the kids that are actually in those classes who needed differentiation and who needed support, especially when I taught casually. I moved back from the UK, and when I was picking up work from people, it was just one size fits all, and there would have been at least 30% of the class that probably needed minor adjustments just to help them engage, really. So, yeah, I definitely think that doing some form of inclusive ed training or at least experience would help everyone across the board.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing how much experience you've had, Andrew, there. But what we love about our job is being able to help bridge that gap, giving them strategies, and just being able to, like a steady person who notices when they need support. It's not always easy, but when you see that student gain confidence and finally feel like they belong in the classroom, it's honestly, the best part about our job it is. But
I couldn't agree more. I think that's and there's small really small wins, I think, in comparison to what you get back in mainstream, and it's a pretty difficult transition to make that from being a mainstream teacher to then going into special ed. And I think you're fortunate enough to be able to see it early on and understand that it's a lot longer process getting those wins, but when you get them, they're good. But you just have to understand that it's a long process comparatively.
Yeah, 100%. And having that patience as well. Like, you don't expect it on the day. It's over a month, or even sometimes a few months or a term.
Years to get some
it's
kids.
not like, especially building that relationship with them students. It's really important. It is to have that patience in the setting we work at. So what are the characteristics we often see with students with ASD, if we're talking about socially, behaviourally, in communication, sensory processing, and even their physical or cognitive presentation during the classroom?
Yeah, so presentation-wise, and you can sort of broadly put it into lots of little areas like stimming, their posture, the way they might need sensory contact with certain things or adverse contact with things, lots of hyper focus on certain things. So you get the in terms of their behaviour. I'll just give you an example for a student. Really, really good. Had quite good verbal and receptive skills. He loved though numbers and stats, and he would just go absolutely into a hole looking at sports and team ladders and team sheets and things like that. So that high interest area, and then becoming unbelievably consumed by that, and then really struggling to remove themselves from it. And then from that, their behaviour could escalate if you say, okay, that's finished now, or not having enough supports in place to help them remove themselves from it. In terms of socially, similar sort of thing. However, getting them to engage with others is also a big problem. So they could be hyper-focused, or they could be really not wanting to engage at all, not understanding social cues, lacking empathy, really focusing predominantly on themselves, and they are essentially the only person that exists, which is a big one. Communication really varies, I think, in that sort of level 1 area. I think when you get down to the lower ends of ASD, where you got more non-verbal, or they're just using utterances, and that becomes another whole level of difficulty in terms of trying to work out what they need. But it can pretty much help, I think, with those guys that are still able to verbalise and communicate quite well. Things like visuals, they can use choice boards, just those things, because when they do become completely overloaded and they have too much cognitive load, plus they fatigue easily, that's something that's easy to point to, or you can take over and make decisions for them. That's a real good tool to have. And looking at like their cognitive presentation, again, it does vary, but in that top sort of higher functioning level, you can really get a lot of good work out of them, especially when you gear it around their high interest areas. So I was able to teach, for that previous student I was talking about, I could teach them how to use Excel. I could get them to enter data. It was like put formulas in, monitor and track a budget. It was, you could really show them some really great and life skills is what we teach. Definitely. So making those kind of adjustments to the curriculum and really sort of tailoring it to that way of them learning was how I sort of learnt that along the way. But again, you can then lose them again. So you kind of have to,
so quickly as well.
Yeah, putting limits on things, definitely, timing limits, and or limits of when things are finishing as well. So lots of pre-warning, lots of pre-teaching, lots of explicit instruction, understanding their triggers or sensitivities, or on a certain day when they're tired, is it a certain person that sets them off, and how can you sort of eliminate that? And then the impact of their executive functioning and how their anxieties might feed into the learning on every given day. So just having them to have like an out or something that they can do for this, whether it be a sensory break, a movement break, even just to remove themselves from whatever it is something that you probably need to think, or we factor in anyway with all of our students. But then probably overall is just that consistency, so everyone is consistent with what they say, what they do, and trying to minimise change. But we also try and encourage them to adapt with the change, because otherwise they're not going to cope in the real world either. So for our secondary guys, that's kind of a little fine balance that we find, which is a good challenge anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you there, Andrew. We've supported students who really thrive on routine and predictability. So if you stick to that schedule, they'll remain calm and focused. But the moment a lesson runs late, a teacher is away and we have a casual in, them changes suddenly, you can see the anxiety just creep in. And that's just like a key for teachers, knowing that these behaviours aren't like about defiance, they're just signals. And if we understand them characteristics, we can respond with empathy instead of frustration and really work with them.
Completely.
Yeah, so they don't shut down and you can see the fidgeting starting to happen. It's just working with them really.
Yeah, and how invaluable it is to have a like an LSA such as yourself who can work like with a class when there is a casualty in there, who knows their routines, who knows all the backgrounds of them, who knows each student. It's because I think there's a lot more legwork that's involved in that job rather than just in a mainstream sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. There, Andrew, what do you think, from your perspective, some of the difficulties ASD students face in a mainstream classroom?
A lot. I think
there is.
Because if they are integrated in that mainstream, just one, the curriculum not being differentiated enough for them, the teachers, and through no fault of their own, teachers are just not trained in specialising in what the students' needs are. But definitely on the surface, it's like the noisy environments. It could be the lights. It could be the smell of the room. It could be the height of their seat. It could be where they are in the room. It could be someone looking at them from across the room. I think in mainstream, also teachers experiencing the behaviours that can come from someone with ASD having anxieties or then leading into, say, a full-blown meltdown.
Yeah.
Even the shutdowns, just knowing the right things to say, which generally only comes with trial and error. And unless you've got time with that student to work through those things, it can be a bit of a long process. Or mainly having that really close relationship with family or their the person who's their main carer, so that you know the tricks and the tools and the strategies that they use or have used prior to them, say, coming into your classroom. And again, just the changes might be changes of room, especially in a high school. And then again, you've got the playgrounds and things like that happen in bigger schools. It can just be so overwhelming for them.
Yeah, definitely. And we see, with transitions, I can't imagine, that's a huge one, as we see just even from at our school, how we have to facilitate that and adapt with bigger groups moving past. and the noise of it all, it can be so stressful for them. It's so taking them that on board and supporting them to help them like manage without feeling like stress is it's a big one.
I think if they do have support staff in the schools, like just little things like letting that student pack up and walk out 5 minutes early to get to their next class without the madness and mayhem in the corridors, or if it's in primary setting, just letting them maybe move out onto the playground earlier, finding their space before other kids get there. There's little tweaks that can be made to try and help or alleviate some of their stresses.
100%. And setting them time limits, like, like for example, we'll pack up 5 minutes before, like that'll make just such a huge difference of just being so they're not rushed, and even like supporting them, offering them headphones or a quieter desk, and just moving them to the back of the room just so they're not feeling like completely like stuck in the middle of it all, where it's just way too overwhelming for them to even not even.
Well, you lose them.
Yeah,
you lose them then for the whole day if that happens early on, and then that can really ruin someone's entire day. So it's important. The small things are important.
Yeah. However, though, on the positive side, we see our students, they're so smart, and we are constantly just so surprised of how, what their ability in learning and just their skills, and especially in their favorite interest areas. But they do have so many strengths. These students. And what do you, from your experience, what are these strengths that they bring to the classroom, and we recognise in these students on a day-to-day basis, Andrew?
Yeah, the strengths are one of the big things, obviously, like I said before, that you try and work towards or work with each day, just so that you're building what they're already good at, what they can already do, which one improves their self-esteem, lowers those anxieties, that the fact that you can actually harness some of those abilities which are far greater than kids who might be in mainstream as well. So yes, they might be lacking in social, they might be lacking in lots of behavioural, but sometimes cognitively they can really excel. Whether that's through, say, art or music, or it could be numbers. But once you find that, and then working with them and just gearing things around their strengths, it could be like their memories can be incredible. Referencing that same student previously, like just knowing how many free throws someone got last year in a certain game in the NBA, like I wouldn't be able to tell you what I ate for lunch yesterday. So that's a really impressive thing that you can really work with. And I guess they are really persistent as well. Whether people call it stubbornness or being obnoxious or whatever, but if you give them something and they really focus and want to achieve it, they will. It's quite impressive, and as long as you can allow for that and support it, it's great. And then through that you can use their process or use the way that they say overcame a challenge or whatever to then do the next one, and then the next one you can go and say, oh, remember when you did that and how amazing that was? Well, this is kind of the same, so we're going to use those same strategies, and you can and you learn to make those great sort of leaps and bounds with kids just over time. I think it's a big times the biggest factor.
Exactly, and you can use that as a positive side as well of helping them when they're dysregulated, as you learn so much from them because their passions just light up in the room, and the statistics and everything, because that's a hyperfixated subject or anything. Like, you will learn so much from them if you take that in and use that as a strategy to help them rein them back in or regulate their emotions. It's a great tool to use, especially in the classroom, with trying to even get them back into the classroom, especially.
Oh, yeah, you can really turn someone around really quickly, say with a favourite song or an image of their favourite character out of a cartoon, and then all of a sudden you're back on track. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as you said there with persistence, it's inspiring. Like, even then, when them things are tough, they'll often keep working at a task for longer than some other peers, like, because they're just like they're so motivated, and they're not just obsessed with the areas of that expertise that can enrich the whole classroom if teachers know how to tap into them.
Yes, providing they don't get too frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. For them teachers wondering and needing them extra strategies on how to support students with ASD, mainly in level 1, especially like them literacy and numeracy tasks. What strategies, Andrew, do you use at school in these classrooms around these students, trying to getting them on task and getting them to complete all these learning activities throughout the day? And
I think number one is just knowing your students. The better you know the student, the more you can adapt your curriculum and what the activities you teach so that they actually engage in them. I guess as you sort of blanket things, it's like I said before, that explicit instruction using visuals. The way that you explain it, maybe using less verbal cues, maybe using some images, stripping things right down so that you're not overloading them, breaking it down into the smaller steps, and doing things in chunks. So you just do a smaller one, let them achieve that, great, and then we can move on to the next. Having things broken down so that they know. There's a popular method called structured teach previously. It used to be done in primary predominantly, that they would have like a 3-task thing, whether they had a little visual schedule and they do 1 task, put their number over on the finish, 2 tasks, put over 3 tasks, or they put it in a drawer, for example. And then they knew that task was complete, they can move on to the next. So all those things, because they can be overwhelmed, if they know they've got 3 tasks and they can't decide which one to start, and they chop and change, or they just don't want it, they're overfaced and they won't do any of them. They might need a quiet space. So they would have, sometimes you could have students maybe just working almost in their little silos, rather than you might see mainstream kids working in groups or tables all pumped together and, they're too close to someone. That can also be triggers. So we predominantly have kids all at separate desks. They all have their own space. If there is noise in the room, we try to eliminate that when we see that could be a trigger for another student. So whether it's asking that student in a way so that they could do whatever they're doing somewhere else, if it's really noisy and they're not actually doing anything wrong. If it is actually poor behaviour, we'll generally move students, and all that's pre-taught. So lots of explicit teaching. So when someone is having a difficult time, if they're making the noise or having a meltdown, then the other students who are still regulated, the safe way we're going to do it is we're going to get up and we're going to move outside. And once the students are understanding of that can become an easier process as well. I think the high interest stuff is the winner for a lot of it. You can try and get creative, and you can link most high interests across most KLAs. If it's art and you're designing pictures of your favourite musician or your favourite cartoon character, if it's in maths, you're using the same character and working out how many points they've scored over whatever video game, if they're in a video game, or learning how to measure their heights and things like that. If it's in literacy, you're doing reading passages you can create with AI. At the moment, we create tailored passages on their high interest area, and they look at like a spelling, punctuation, grammar. They do editing of the passage, and because it's on their high interest area, they're fully engaged. Like 4 mornings a week for 20, 30 minutes, they'll complete those tasks. And compared to, I remember teaching prior to having AI being able to manipulate things, they would all read a similar passage or the same sort of thing, like Jake went down to the lake and whatever. But that's really opened up a great tool for us with differentiating for kids. And then letting them become comfortable with sharing their work, I think is really important as well, because a lot of them are shy away from talking in public or don't want to share things. But getting them to be proud of what they've done, and if it is their high interest area, they're more inclined to talk about it and share that, because lots of them are wanting other people to love what they love. I think, I guess the other thing with tools, probably using lots more hands-on stuff. So getting them, if it's in maths, doing lots of cooking or lots of work, life skill-wise, measuring, having those concrete materials, and just having more time for doing tasks. So, and that takes a while to get right as well. Learning where to pitch a task and then how much time should that take with support. I think that just comes with practice. But they're all probably the things that I would say are the best strategies and effective ways of managing it.
Yeah, no, that's some great points there, Andrew. But that kind of personal link can flip engagement completely with this, with our students. And like what we've really found that effective communication is, connecting tasks to their interests. It helps a lot. Our days and the students' days go such more smoothly. It does, and even with like noticing, making each lesson more with using materials and stuff that they've that are hands on as well. Like that, just it helps them. Like the engagement just goes up completely. It does. Like instead of just constantly writing or typing, because their focus isn't as long as most other students are. Obviously, we've seen. So, final question for you today, Andrew, is that what advice would you give to mainstream teachers who are maybe new to working with students with ASD, that they haven't heard any strategies before? What's some top of your best tips you would give them, these teachers?
I think some of those ones I've mentioned before, but when I look back at how I thought I could teach when I first started teaching, I thought I was pretty good, and then moved into special ed, and I was like, I am not very good at all, and realised that learning how to strip things right back down to the very, very basics, and then learning how to build that all back up from every step right up to the higher order, that's the key, because that means then you know how to differentiate. So wherever you go in with a lesson, you know that you can go up or down, and that takes a bit of practice. And then I guess then it's with your students first and foremost. So just building that relationship, getting to know how they work best, how they don't work best, and then managing your environment to sort of help or support that. Being consistent and clear with your communication, especially with families, like starting off really clear, getting them on board, telling them exactly what's happening, how you're managing them in the classroom, and then anything that's happening at home, getting a lot of feedback from them, and the heads up, especially of a morning, if someone's having a home or the night before, that could really feed into their day and can make it go one way or the other. Just that knowledge is really important, because there are really fine lines, and if we can get on that in the morning when they come in the gate and sort of address it, we can make their days a lot more achievable. But I think I mentioned it before, but the role of the support staff is like above and beyond what anyone probably should be asked to do. I think they're invaluable, just in their consistency, the way that they care for the kids, and that they're the constant as well. But also just, that there's not a lot of thanks that they get either. So, it's really hard when kids who might be lacking that empathy or understanding the feelings of others, let alone their own, keeping your support staff sweet is a really important thing. And they really make things a lot more achievable, and educating them as well. So like working with them, explaining things to them, practicing stuff day in, day out, and then, they can pretty much, I'd have all the faith in the world that our LSAs can pretty much run classes just as well as we can. So, that's not to say that you shouldn't do your degree, but I just think their experience on firsthand is priceless.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Like I couldn't agree more. Like relationships are the foundation, with your teacher, LSA, and the student. Once you know them, they can trust you, and everything it gets easier from there onwards. Fingers crossed, but not all the time. But it does. Relationships makes it a lot more easier to connect with these students and bring them back to focus and get on these learning tasks. But that even as well, sometimes like the adjustments that teachers make for these students don't always have to be massive. It's just sometimes about simple and clear instructions, a visual cue, a quiet corner, the movement room, or just get outside and some play and some physical activity. Those small changes can completely shift a student's experience in the classroom. It can, and just bring a smile to their face, or just de-escalate their emotions and their anxiety. But I'd just like to say thank you so much, Angie, for sharing your experience today. Supporting these students with ASD can be so challenging. I really give it to you. Like it's a hard job, but it's also one of the most rewarding, as you know, parts of teaching. But hopefully this conversation has given our listeners some practical strategies and encouragement to keep building inclusive classrooms. So thank you so much for your time today. It's really appreciated.
No worries. My pleasure. Thanks, Mon.
Okay.